Just when you think that things couldn't get worse for Justin Trudeau, it turns out they can get much worse. He is not only tanking in the polls, not only is every single move or thing that he says viewed under the microscope, but now the RCMP is actually investigating the Arrive scam. The Arrive scam. I can't help it. I know it's called Arrive Cam, but I just can't help but call it the Arrive Scam app. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. I hope you consider turning post notifications on so you can actually be notified of upcoming videos. And I also want to remind people that I am streaming on Mr. Sunshine Baby, this channel, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. And I know it just happens to coincide with the Oilers games, but you know, that will be coming to an end soon when the Oilers bring home the cup. Without further ado, let's get into this video. So we're going to start off with the polls like we normally do. Conservatives are still sitting at 206 seats projected, bottom line 178, top end 229. No real changes there. Liberals at 80 seats projected. I do think that you're going to see that really start to come down, especially after Monday. Monday is really, really big, like going down in the history books. And we're going to get into that in a moment. 99% likely for the Conservatives to win the most seats and 99% likely for the Conservatives to win a majority government. So everything is looking copacetic as it should. Now, here's what's happening on Monday. There is a by-election, Toronto-St. Paul. It's been a Liberal riding. They've had 29 elections or 29 seats or 25 votes since Trudeau's been in office. They have not given any leeway. Historically, it's a super duper liberal riding. And this might be the first time in a very long time that it isn't. That's right. There are a tremendous amount of people that are on that ballot sheet. Lots of people in that, in the riding for to win that by-election. But if the Liberals, this doesn't win for the Liberals, no matter what. So if the Liberals lose, that means that, wow, Liberals have dug themselves such a deep hole that they've lost like the most secured seat out of every single riding across Canada. If they barely win, which is a possibility, it also tells the entire country that everybody has lost faith. This should be a landslide victory. It has been a landslide victory for the Liberals, and this might be what kind of decides a little bit more or gives us a little bit more hint as to how the next federal election is going to go. It's going to be a massive reality check for the Liberal MPs. So this is going to be awesome. Things are going to get crazy over the weekend, so make sure that you stick around because going to be by-election news coming left, right, and center. Now let's get on to our next story here. Since we are talking about the polls, Anita Anand, federal Liberal MP says the Liberal government is not focused on the polls, even though they have dropped since September, which is crazy. The Liberals are in a popularity contest. That's what politics is. I mean, yes, you have to be able to pull off, the things that you say you're going to do, and it has to be in the best interest of the citizens and of the economy. But obviously they haven't been doing that, and it's been reflecting not only on social media, not only on mainstream media, but also in the opinion polls. And what you're about to see is the by-election actual voting that happens on Monday. But let's take a look at what she has to say.
You're 20 points behind in the polls. You started out sitting 14 points behind. What are you going to do this summer to turn things around for the party?
Well, the goals are clearly laid out in Budget 2024. We're going to continue to work for Canadians and to alleviate the pressures that they are feeling because of rising prices and the high cost of living.
But no matter what you've done so far, it doesn't seem to be
Actually,
landing.
we're not focused on the polls. We're focused on the fact that we need to continue to put forward dental care, pharmacare, housing supports for families and students. These are all measures that are going to actually ameliorate the situation that
Wow. So that just sounds like someone knows the ship is sinking and they're in total denial and in collateral damage. Like, this is insane. It's literally a popularity contest, and your popularity has sunk to all-time lows in the history of Canada. and they're saying we're not worried about it, you absolutely should be worried about it. And speaking of worried, we have another massive worry on our hands. We have a Russia and North Korea coalition. They have already teamed up. Putin went to North Korea, and the leaders have gotten together, and they now have each other's backs if one or the other is attacked. And that's pretty scary. I mean, there's a whole article about this. We're not going to get into it because it's going to consume a lot of time, and I want to focus more on Canadian stuff. But this is scary because NATO is literally picking a war with Russia. And if Russia's going around making these types of deals and allies, we are now in the crosshairs of all of the other allies' target, right? So we could be in the bad books of North Korea, which, I mean, we haven't really been in the good books of North Korea. No country really has, except now, obviously, Russia. So not looking good there. For those that have been speculating about a Cold War or another world war, it seems like NATO is really pushing us to be closer and closer to that. So not looking good, especially when you have Justin Trudeau that comes out and says these types of things. Breaking, the Prime Minister Trudeau does not rule out deploying Canadian troops on the ground in the Ukraine-Russia war. Not good for us at all.
What happened now to putting military trainers in Ukraine? Can you be clear on this point?
We have always been there to support Ukraine with what it needs. We are delivering light armored vehicles as we speak that Ukraine is in need of, and we continue to do training in many different locations. This is something that we will continue to be there for Ukraine on.
Yeah, this isn't something that Canadians got to vote on. And in fact, if they did, we wouldn't really be in this level of support. Most Canadians, I mean, a lot of Canadians do agree that Canada has historically been a peacekeeping country. Providing humanitarian aid is one thing, but actually funding a war and then getting involved with boots on the ground, that's not peacekeeping. That means that we are in the war, which, yeah, it's easy for us to be in a war over there, but that war could always come here if we're not careful, which is obviously Canadians' big concern. It's on our radar. And speaking of radar, we have an employee of the month in Parliament. That's right. In Justin Trudeau's office, he has a painting or a plaque that has employee of the month with Jagmeet Singh's face on it. This went up on Pierre Poilievre's official Twitter account. This is absolutely hilarious. I mean, chances are it's Photoshopped, but still very, very funny nonetheless. And I absolutely love the fact that Pierre Poilievre is taking politics into his own hands. He's got his own approach, and he's really highlighting how big of a joke Justin Trudeau and this coalition is. Now, here's some big news that just came out. Dominic LeBlanc came out and has said that Canada is now listing the IRGC as a T-word group. But we're going to get into why they're doing this after we watch the video. Here we go.
Today, I'm here to announce that our government has made the decision to list the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity under the Criminal Code. This action sends a strong message that Canada will use all of the tools at its disposal to combat the terrorist entity of the IRGC. The Iranian regime has consistently displayed disregard for human rights, both inside and outside of Iran, as well as a willingness to destabilize the international rules-based order. Our government will ensure that there is no immunity for Iran's unlawful actions and its support of terrorism.
There is a lot of speculation as to why they did this and why they did this now. Politics is a game of chess, and unfortunately that comes at our expense. Instead of doing the right thing and having listed this as a T-word group, the RGC as a T-word group a long time ago when, you know, the Canadian plane was shot down and Canadians were killed, they've been waiting and they've been waiting and they've been waiting for this exact moment. Remember at the start of the video, I talked about this by-election that's happening in in Toronto, St. Paul. Well, that actually is kind of why they are listing the RGC as a terrorist group right now, because former NDP leader Tom Mulcair tells CTV that he thinks the IRGC designation is about the Toronto St. Paul's by-election, where he suggests the riding's Jewish population is unhappy with recent Liberal record on Israel and Gaza. It's transparently clear that the Liberals are reacting more to what they are getting on the doorstep than to do anything with the RCMP or CSIS told them. So they are tanking in the polls, and they have a by-election, and they are trying to win back the vote, the confidence of a Jewish population, which is heavily populated in that riding. Now, I actually agree with that. I do think that that is very, very accurate. They have been pressured by the Conservatives, by the NDP, by everybody to list the IRGC as a terrorist entity, a terrorist group, and they haven't done that. Conveniently, now they do. Years after there's a massive event, years after they've been pressured to do this. This is the greasy game that the Liberals play. People are fed up with this. They have waited 2 years for this exact moment. Chances are they knew that there was going to be this by-election. Well, obviously, right? It's set in stone. And they've been waiting for that opportunity to for a by-election. At some point, there's going to be a Jewish population that doesn't like the government. It just so happened that the war in Gaza and Israel broke out, and the government hasn't done anything to denounce all of the Hamas protests that have happened, all the encampments that have happened right here in Canada. And as it turns out, now they're leveraging something that shouldn't have been leveraged. It should have been done years ago. So I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. I think it's very disingenuous and greasy of the Liberals to wait for now to do that. But let me know what you guys think. Next up, we have Conservative MP Michael Chong, who has a few words to say about the listing.
It's been 6 years since Conservatives first called on the Government of Canada to list the IRGC as a terrorist entity. Following that initial adoption of the motion in the House of Commons, Conservatives have on many occasions called on the government to list the IRGC as a terrorist entity because of the threats it presents to the safety and security of Canadians, in particular Canadians in the Persian community. And because of the government's inaction over the last 6 years, the Iranian regime's capabilities here in North America have only increased. And the government is only taking action now because of recent reports outlining that increased capacity by the Iranian regimes. Reports such as reports indicating, for example, that there are some 700 agents of the regime operating here in Canada. Reports such as the regime hiring 2 members of the Hells Angels in British Columbia to commit assassinations here against persons in North America, and examples such as the downing of Ukrainian airliner Flight 752. The final thing I would say on this is that the manner in which the government is making this announcement is another example of their complete abdication of responsibility to protect this country's national security. The fact that this information has been leaked out ahead of the announcement has simply provided the regime in Tehran the opportunity to avoid the very sanctions that are going to be promulgated. It's allowing members of the regime to move assets and to take other measures to avoid the sanctions that are apparently to be announced. So Conservatives will strengthen our national security and ensure that we protect communities here in Canada, particularly the Persian community, from these kinds of foreign interference threats and threats to our national security. Je peux dire en français?
So there's a lot of reason to believe now, moving forward, that whenever the government the Liberal government is in a position where they should do something, they're going to wait for when that thing would be most opportune, right? So, I don't know, for example, all of the encampments from the pro-Hamas protesters, or acknowledging the fact that the RCMP is investigating them. They're just waiting for the right time to strike, almost like predators. It's almost like you can correlate Justin Trudeau and the dictator, liberal, communist regime in Canada to that of a predator. Maybe that's a far stretch, but I think that's a pretty good example. Next up, we have Steve McKinnon says he's extremely eager to move forward with Bill C-63 so the government has power to punish people for online hate. I bet you are very excited about that, Steve.
Often allocate time in the House. We have lots of time for debate. I could give you statistics on various bills. But online harms, the clock simply ran out without us allocating time, and we were unable to get that to committee.
How come you didn't, like, I mean,
Because-
this
well, I think
is
it's
your
pretty
government's
clear.
answer to the rise in hate. You've
Yeah.
been promising it since 2019. The minister says it's going to take a while to set up that regulator. Why not prioritize it to actually make it a reality?
I'm afraid that's a question you'll have to ask Mr. Poilievre, why his party is unable to commit to a proper debate, committee, witnesses, and moving that bill along. We are extremely eager to move C-63 into committee, hear from Canadians, and get it off to the Senate.
But it only got debated in June. You tabled it. It was tabled in February, second reading June. Why didn't you put it on your paper ahead of time?
Well, as I just laid out for you, 15 bills in 14 weeks is a pretty productive minority parliament.
If it was productive, but you were saying that it's the Conservatives' fault for holding things up, which is it?
It was both.
These people are just so freaking power hungry, and they're so determined to absolutely tank our country and remove all of our rights and freedoms in Canada, or what little we have left. Finally, we're getting into the RCMP investigating Justin Trudeau. So this comes after there's a tweet from the 6 Buzz TV saying RCMP reveals that they are currently conducting more than half a dozen criminal investigations into various Trudeau Liberal approved federal contracts, including their ongoing ArriveCan investigation. So when you work for the government, you're allowed to have a numbered company, you're allowed to have a corporation, you're allowed to have a business on the side. But if that is a conflict of interest with what you are doing for your government position, if you're using like insider knowledge or insider connections to be able to get said contracts or to be able to do said business, that's where it becomes a massive problem. And that's where a lot of MPs, like insane amount of MPs and government individuals, have found themselves in a bit of a pickle. You have Randy Bobandy, right, who has a numbered company. It's not illegal for him to have that. He can absolutely do that. He can have a landscaping company. He can have a contracting business. For crying out loud, he can have a real estate business. It doesn't really matter. But his company has been bidding on government contracts and getting them, and that's not okay. That's a massive conflict of interest. So that's just one of the many things that are being investigated. Of course, the ArriveCan, the McKinsey company, they have government ties. They have federal MPs that are on the board, that are on the payroll, that are getting dividends from these companies, and there's some insider stuff that's happening. So let's take a look at what is really under the hood with these investigations. So from the National Post, you have an article that came out yesterday. RCMP says it has multiple investigations into the ArriveCan procurement. Commissioner mum on details. So far, 2 senior public servants have been suspended as part of the investigation, and GC Strategies has been suspended from bidding on other government contracts. From Ottawa, RCMP, the commissioner, Mike Duheme, told MPs that his force has multiple investigations underway into the ArriveCan scandal. Now, I know a lot of people are skeptical. Nothing ever happens with government. Nothing ever gets done. But what has happened was something that, with the right malicious mind, with the right criminal mentality, it probably could have been pulled off and gone undetected. But they chose to do this on the ArriveCan app, which was at the spotlight of an entire country. If you're going to do this, do the criminal activity somewhere behind the curtain where not the entire country is looking at. It's an app for a phone that could have been designed for a few thousand or a couple $100,000, not 60 million. So yeah, of course, people are going to be outraged, and it absolutely has taken way longer than it should. And it seems so unfair because you have people that are right now in Canada committing insane crimes insane crimes, and they get held, detained by the police, and they get let out on bail within a few days or within even the week or a couple of weeks. Yet somehow a multi-million-dollar, hundreds of millions of dollars has been stolen from right under our eyes, and we're all watching. Like, we're all seeing it happen in real time. It's like, hey, that's illegal, that's illegal, that's illegal, that's illegal. No matter how much we've said it, nothing has happened yet. But this investigation is going to prove that the ties are going to be looking at phone records, emails, text messages, bank statements, who owns, who's on the board of directors, potentially who's even getting dividends, right? So it's wild how this could actually really crumble like no other scandal has ever crumbled in the past. But don't take my word for it. Take the House of Commons' word for it. Let's take a look at this clip here.
Admit Mr. Firth at the bar of the House.
At arms to admit Mr. Firth at the bar of the House.
So this is the guy who runs GC Strategies or McKenzie Incorporated or whatever the hell they're called. And I don't know if you remember this, but when he testified here in the House, he just played a little bit of victim. He said that his doctor has diagnosed him with, whatever, not depression, but anxiety, and that any sort of involvement in testifying with this whole situation triggers his anxiety, and then it's a medical exemption, so he can't talk about it, which is a clever way of getting around testifying. But that's not going to cover up the paper trail, the bank statements, the actual crimes that have been committed. And it's official. The RCMP is investigating this, and they're not going to get away. No amount of money is going to solve what's happened. It's there. It's done. You can't cover up what's already happened because, well, from a criminal standpoint, it wasn't really done the proper way. Not that I know how to do it all, how to pull this off properly, but if you're going to pull off a massive heist like this, don't do it on an app that the whole world is watching going, what the hell is this? How did this cost millions, hundreds of millions of dollars? And it's also the most rated app on the Apple Store, above TikTok, above Instagram, above Facebook Messenger, a Canadian immigration app. Yet nobody is buying that. So they had a real opportunity to maybe pull this off on a much smaller scale in a different way, and they didn't. And it's crumbling the house of cards. And I can't help but smile at their incompetence, their failure, more importantly, their greed. They are so greedy. It's cost us a lot of money, but at the end of the day, justice will be served. At least I'm very optimistic about that. And finally, we're going to wrap this up with a clip of Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons yesterday talking about Trudeau's whackonomics. Here we go.
Session of Parliament taught us is that after 9 years of this Prime Minister, everything is broken. 25% of Canadians are now living in poverty. 2 million lined up at food banks. 38% more people are homeless. Housing costs have doubled. It wasn't like this before this Prime Minister, and it won't be like this after he's gone. Will he put us through another year and a half of this costly hell, or will he call a carbon tax election today so we can elect a common sense government to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition actually cared more about Canadians than he does about his own political interests, he'd be supporting the 400,000 kids with help with the National School Food Program. He'd be voting in favour, instead of opposing at every turn, the dental care program that has already helped over 200,000 seniors and will now, as of next week, start helping young people and Canadians with disabilities. He'd be standing with us on expanding childcare spaces instead of campaigning against it. But, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't care about Canadians. He cares only about himself.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, these are the same promises that he's been making for 9 years. And instead of the theoretical utopia that he's promised, what Canadians are living through is hell, with tent cities popping up across the country in places they never existed before, with 2 million people lined up in food banks, 1 in 10 Torontonians included in that number, in a town where right now it is impossible for almost anyone to afford a home, and there are 256 tent cities. Why won't he recognize that these are the very real consequence of his policy of wackonomics?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as part of our plan to invest the most ambitious housing plan this country has ever seen, to invest in supports for seniors, supports for young people, supports for Canadians with disabilities, the Conservative leader is choosing to demonstrate what everyone knows Conservative parties do, which is protect the wealthiest and let everyone else fend for themselves. While we are asking the wealthiest Canadians to pay a little bit more by raising the capital gains inclusion rate for anyone making over $250,000 in a given year on selling properties, he's standing with the wealthiest, not with the middle class and people working hard to join it.
The craziest thing about that statement is how he said they're asking for the wealthiest to pay a little bit more. And on a recent interview with, I think it was on CTV, or no, it was CBC, it was an exclusive interview, he retracted the statement, that he thinks that the wealthiest should pay a little bit more. And he said, that's actually not true. We don't need them to pay a little bit more. We are asking that they take home a little bit less. It's the same thing, dumbass. It's literally the same thing. You're just changing how you phrase it. Oh, you don't want me to pay more? You want me to bring home less? Sign me up. Where do I shake the deal? That sounds incredible. You have my support. Like, does you think people are dumb? Oh my goodness. This freaking guy, man.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the middle class doesn't exist after 9 years of this Prime Minister. Here are the facts. 76% of young people believe they'll never afford a home. 38% more homeless people. 256 homeless encampments in Toronto alone. 2 million people lined up at a food bank. 1 in 4 Canadians skipping meals because they can't afford the price of food. Is this what he meant when he said sunny ways for the middle class?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've seen throughout this session and indeed throughout his career, covering more than 19 years as a parliamentarian, that the leader of the Conservative Party is very quick to use sound bites that use Canadians, that exacerbate and exaggerate and indeed amplify the real concerns people are facing, but he is nowhere on solutions for that. He's standing against dental care, against pharmacare, against investments in the middle class and people working hard to join it, against investments to create jobs and a future for Canadians, because all he cares about is himself and his future.
No, all you have to accept is the fact that his carbon tax will not reduce by 1 penny the cost of climate change to Canadians. It will not eliminate 1 flood, 1 drought, 1 storm, 1 anything. This carbon tax literally does nothing to change the weather or the climate. What it does is makes Canadians poorer. So will he finally admit that all along he's been misleading Canadians, that he knew he had the data that Canadians pay more and get less and get screwed over by the carbon tax?
Encourage all members to try to find ways that for polite words in the House of Commons. The Honourable Leader, the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, the only way the Conservative leader's math makes sense is when he believes that climate change has no cost for Canadians. Canadians right across this country are seeing the impact of climate events, the impact of the need to innovate and create greener, cleaner jobs for the future as we deliver our resources to the world. The fact that he doesn't believe in climate change means that he doesn't believe the climate action that puts more money in people's pockets is worth it. Well, that's exactly where we disagree, and we're going to continue to help Canadians get through this.
Yeah, not a single person believes that, which is why it's reflecting in the polls. You have all-time lowest support for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party, and it's exactly why likely they are going to lose their riding on Monday at the by-election, and they're going to get their ass beat at the next federal election. Let's go, Pierre. I believe it's going to be an insane sweep, a conservative wave from coast to coast to coast. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Let me know what you guys would like to see from the outcome of the RCMP investigation into these really horrible criminal activity that has happened with the illegal bidding and contract manipulation within the government. That's where we're going to end the video, folks. On your way out, I would like to encourage you guys to smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.